Okay, all you fantastic Republicans out there. I want to get something out first real quick, and then I'm going to get a little more serious because the next two podcasts are going to be about psychological considerations in a time of crisis and medical considerations in a time of crisis. This is not the fun stuff. This isn't the stuff you sit and laugh at. I am going to be doing them fairly serious for a change. It's information I need to get out there. And again, if you're just starting out in this and you're going to get the lead role of the head of the mag or at least a big influencer in the mag, and if you don't know mag, it's a mutual assistance group. We'll go into that later too. But this is stuff you need to know, need to be aware of, and things to look out for. So the first thing I want to talk about before we dive into the physical considerations in a time of crisis is the No Kings rally this past weekend. Would you believe those sons of bitches used photos from the Charlie Kirk, the procession from the Charlie Kirk, the march they did for Charlie Kirk, and used them as photos for the No Kings rally, supposedly on the news, to show greater numbers than what actually showed up. When they actually showed the numbers, and again, I did the job for you. I surfed around several TV stations, and much to my amazement, even CNN called them out on the bullshit. Just stay out of this shit. Honest to God, it's the worst thing you can do is get tied up with one of these brain dead, brainwashed TDS lunatics. Just give them a wide berth, or give them a wide girth. Stay away from them. Don't cross their path. Don't talk to them. This shit should be over almost about the same time as the Iran war. Hopefully these TDS idiots fizzle out here real soon. All right, now I want to go on to the psychological considerations in a time of crisis. I'm going to tell you how serious this is. I noticed my coffee was empty, and I didn't go down and refill it before we started this. I just don't want to do this like I do the other podcasts. I want this to be serious. So in times of crisis, whether caused by natural disasters, public health emergencies, conflict, or social disruption, the psychological impact on individuals and communities can be profound and long-lasting. This could be the toughest people in your group, the guys that could, punch a tree down. It affects different people different ways. While psychological survival is often the immediate priority, mental and emotional well-being plays a critical role in how effectively people respond to, endure, and recover from adverse events. Understanding psychological considerations during crisis is essential for maintaining stability, supporting resilience, and reducing long-term harm. Now, when I think about the psychological crisis that people are going to experience, whether it's a grid down or civil war or whatever, I think more about people seeing wounded or deceased people for the first time in their life. It can be nerve-wracking as hell. It's like a cold punch to the face if you've never seen it before and you're just not wired to handle it, and that's fine. Not everyone is. I'm not taking anything away from anyone that ends up with some kind of a minor or major psychological problem because of the first time they had to deal with a crisis. And a little background on this. I was involved in one of the first drills for a mass shooter in a school in the country. It was huge, multi-jurisdictional. It was done at one of the biggest high schools in the area, and they had a bunch of kids in on it. They had professional makeup people come in, actual professional makeup people come in to do up the kids that were supposedly shot, to do up all the blood and the wounds and everything else. They had worked with some of the male and female students to teach them how to actually act like they were shot, like holding on to a wound or screaming or sitting alongside of somebody that was dead and they're just pointing there screaming because they don't know what to do. It was one of the most well thought out things I'd ever seen in my life as far as drills go, except for one thing. I'm sorry, two things. And I'll tell you what both of those are in a second. Now, I will set the scene for you. All these multi-jurisdictional cops are circling the school. So that part was a little unreal because they could be coming from 2 or 3 counties over. Other than that, they ran it pretty accurate. But as soon as the call went out, they realized very, very quickly that they missed some stuff. The first part that I was involved with was when we breached the door to get into the school. It was like barricaded up, like the guy went in that door and then barricaded the door so no one could follow him in. We breached the door. We're calling for SWAT. We're calling for everything because we could see like a body down the hall, more like a leg or 2 legs sticking out, I remember. And we went tactical. We cleared all the rooms all the way down the hall. And when we came around the corner, there were bodies everywhere, bleeding, like they were bleeding. There were people holding wounds, crying. There were girls pointing at, like, I guess it was their boyfriend or whatever, screaming because, it looked like the top of his head was folded back. And we went to move, and we realized about half of our team either froze or were walking out of the building. They didn't want to partake anymore. They were done with it. They weren't ready for it. They weren't prepared for it. Honestly, they didn't know it was going to be that bad. You fight like you train like you fight. I don't think they should have, coddled anybody on this kind of drill. I think it should be, like I said, a cold punch to the face. But we realized very, very quickly that they were not equipped mentally with the training and the coping skills to deal with that. And keep in mind, this was only a drill, and they went into it knowing it was only a drill. But when they came around the corner and they saw that it wasn't a drill anymore, most of the officers that had a hard time with it actually had kids in school that age, and I think that was the biggest problem we had. And before anybody goes saying anything, I had one female cop on my 6 that never backed down. She was right there with me the whole way through. The other thing we realized, and this has nothing to do with the podcast today, but I want to point it out because I'll point it out when we do communications again. They realized very, very quickly that nobody could talk to anybody basically because every different municipality has their own frequencies. And some of them weren't even, their radios were so old they weren't even set up to talk to other counties. They had so these guys were calling dispatch. Dispatch was relaying a message to the dispatch from the other side, and that dispatcher was telling their people. So you can imagine it's like building a bridge to communicate. How much time that took away from us going forward while we're searching and clearing, and how hard it was to accurately depict to the mutual aid EMS that was arriving. No way to communicate with them. It was a CF for sure. It was a clusterfuck for sure. But what I'm trying to get across is anyone can be affected psychologically during a crisis. And if you got arms, disembodied arms and legs and heads laying around, it's going to bring the biggest and the toughest guy down to his knees, I promise you. So this is something that really needs to be taken seriously. That's why I'm not clowning around. You figure if shit goes down, and I know I keep using the EMP, but again, I think that's, out of all the bad things that could happen, I think that's the most likely thing that we're going to see. If people get injured, if there's an earthquake and buildings collapse and people lose limbs, and you're going to lose as many people during the search and rescue if buildings aren't stable and people aren't trained, as you're going to lose in the buildings. In the collapse, you're going to lose a lot of people in the collapse, especially if it's done at night. But anyone can be affected. Okay. The nature of psychological stress in a crisis. Crisis-induced Crisis induce a high level of uncertainty, fear, and loss of control. Individuals may face threats to their safety, separation from loved ones, or disruption of daily routine. These stressors activate the body's natural fight or flight response, which is helpful in short-term danger, but can become harmful when prolonged. And this is what happened during 9/11 with some of the officers and firemen at 9/11 in New York. These guys could never come out of it. They were exposed to it for so long that they're going to carry it with them the rest of their life. That feeling that day, that control, that fight or flight, it's embedded in them now, and they can't shut it off. And I'm talking about years and years and years of therapy, and they still couldn't shut it off. I had the pleasure of working with a deputy in Sarasota, and every once in a while, if it goes too quiet or there wasn't anything going on or we were on a long break or something like that, if you look at him, you can see he was there. In his mind, he was still there. He just couldn't separate it. I think they might have pulled him off patrols and actually put him behind a desk. But it just messed him up. It's just that long-term exposure to a situation that bad just screwed him up. Somebody should have recognized it before it got so bad, but I guess they were just so busy or so overwhelmed that they didn't have time to be watching their own people when they were trying to save everybody else. Common emotional responses include anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, and confusion. People may also experience difficulty concentrating, disrupted sleep, change in appetite, and so on. In extreme cases, individuals may develop acute stress reaction or long-term conditions such as post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what I was just talking about, right? The importance of psychological resilience. Resilience refers to the ability to adapt and recover from adversity. In a crisis, resilient individuals are better able to manage stress, make decisions, and support others. Resilience is not an inherent trait, but a set of skills and behaviors that can be developed. All right, let's stop right there. It can be developed. It can't be perfected. It can't be mastered. I can tell you right now, if you put somebody that was born with the ability to do this and somebody that was trained with the, or we'll say developed to do this kind of situation, you will notice right away the person that was born with the ability and the natural coping mechanisms can take charge and start delegating immediately, where the person that was trained to develop those skills has to stop, put it in gear, go through the steps, and go from there. So if you have a decent-sized mag group, which I recommend you control the numbers of a mag group, but if you have a decent-sized mag group and you have somebody born with those abilities naturally, you might want to consider putting them in charge if indeed a crisis happens. I know us testosterone-loaded, he-men think that I'm never giving up control if I'm in charge. That's just an asinine approach to this right now. You play to your strengths, especially in a crisis situation. Key factors that will contribute to resilience: a basis of a strong social connections, a sense of purpose or meaning. You have to have a sense of purpose. Problem-solving skills, emotional regulation, flexibility, and adaptability. Encouraging these qualifies within individuals and communities can significantly improve outcomes during and after a crisis. During is one thing, but when it comes to psychological, after the crisis is the worst part. I'm telling you right now, people are called to reckon. The problem is they not only have to cope with it, but everybody they see for the next month is going to say, hey, weren't you in that? What did you do? And then they're forced to see those mental images that they'll never be able to get out of their mind. They're going to be forced to cope with the fact that they might have said, nope, leave them, they're too far gone, get somebody else. That's the shit you got to take with you the rest of your life. And the fact that these dollars are going to be asking questions all the time, they're not going to have that presence about themselves to not ask these questions. So make sure that whoever's in charge and calling the shots is tough enough to be in charge and call the shots. And don't think about, well, moment one after the crisis occurs, I'm going to know what to do better because I was trained with this. Yeah, you might be, but you might not be able to handle it afterwards. If you've never dealt with the real thing, you don't know what you can and can't handle afterwards. You heard that, right? You don't know. All right, let that sink in for a minute. The emotional responses across different populations, age groups, and cultures differs vastly. Some cultures, let's be honest, some of these, hell, in the United States even, but like in the Philippines and Thailand, and, all these places, they keep building villages on the beaches and tsunamis keep washing them out to sea and they lose hundreds of people, and it's like, will we ever learn? But the United States is just as guilty of this. Let's talk about, Tornado Alley? Where is it, Kansas? I know it's in a breadbasket out there somewhere, dirty, dusty, whatever. People just keep putting up houses and locating mobile homes right smack dab in the middle of Tornado Alley. I don't get it. But we are no different. We are no better. We are no worse. But it goes on all over the world. It's almost like they want the challenge. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it. But let's go back to what we said about different groups may respond differently. Let's look at children. Children may have difficulty understanding what is happening and may rely heavily on adults for reassurance. They may exhibit aggressive behaviors such as bedwetting, clinginess, or expression of fear through irritability and withdrawal. This is one of those things I talked about before where your mag's going to follow your cues. Children, more than anyone, are going to be looking at you. And if you're running around banging pots and pans together, screaming it's the end of the world, the kids are going to freak out. If you can somehow maintain a semi-calm demeanor and maybe throw a smile every now and then at the kids, you might have a chance with the children. But if the person in charge can't handle this shit and they're going nuts, oh well, you lost the children because they're going to lose their minds. Then we have the adults. Adults often experience stress related to responsibility, such as protecting family members, maintaining resources, or making critical decisions. They may suppress emotions in order to function, which can lead to delayed psychological effects. Well, yeah, I understand that. I've heard that. I've read about that. But the God's honest truth is I've been suppressing shit since I went in the Marines. I'm still healthy. I haven't walked into McDonald's with the shotgun and clean shop. I'm fine. It depends on the person, but I'm fine. Some people can't, and you got to give them a way to vent. Then we got the elderly individuals. Older adults may face increased vulnerability due to isolation, health concerns, or limited mobility. They may also experience a heightened anxiety about their safety and well-being. Now, we talked about this when we talked about prepping with the elderly and the handicapped both. And the only way I know how to explain it to you is if you ever, like when you were younger, if you were in a swimming pool and you were in the middle of the pool in the deep end and you realize, oh shit, I don't know how to swim. Or, you jumped in and you realized you were in the deep end and you're like, oh shit, I don't know how to swim. And you start swimming for the wall of the pool and you're not going anywhere because you're panicking, you're flailing. That panic sensation when you can't get to the wall of the pool because you think you're going to drown. Imagine what that's like for the handicapped and the elderly thinking about in the crisis situation. What if they don't come back for me? What if they forget about me? What if whatever? They live with that every day if they think about this. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing to imagine that person stuck in a wheelchair that knows they can't get anywhere by themselves. Or like the elderly, phasing in and out of cognizance, like they might have Alzheimer's, and when the Alzheimer's kicks in, they don't give a shit. But when it kicks out, what's left? Reality, and they have to face that. So keep that in mind. This is why I say to include them. This is why inclusion is so important. If you don't include them, you've just tripled your problem. All right, elderly individuals, going down the list more, Older adults may face increased vulnerability. Nope, did that one already. Never mind. I was going for first responders. Can't even read my own handwriting. First responders and caregivers, those providing aid in crisis situations are at risk of burnout, compassion fatigue, and secondary trauma. Continuous exposure to distressing situations can have cumulative psychological effects. Your example for this one, when I got out of the Marines, I was running with volunteer fire department, one of the best in the state, and we had 3 major highways going through our territory where they intersected. And every time it snowed, or the roads would get bad, if the ice or snow or black ice or whatever, we would actually have an all hands at the station, and we would actually run calls in shifts. Even though it was a volunteer station, we would run the vehicle accident calls in shifts due to the fact that so many times you get there to the scene and the driver's favorite head is laying in the back seat, or they have that compression chest injury on the steering wheel and they're okay when they get out of the car, and 2 minutes later they're dead. There's a lot of situations where first responders, they don't even feel it for a couple days. But we did what we could to mitigate it to the point where we were running 2 or 3 hours at a time, and then we'd switch off just so you didn't have it endlessly until the crisis was over. But sometimes it would go 16 hours running calls like that because the roads would be so bad. All right, coping mechanisms and strategies. Effective coping strategies can help individuals manage stress and maintain psychological stability. All right, I got 2 things for you for coping mechanisms and strategies. Get a dog. Get a real big dog you can wrestle around with and shit. That's one really good way to deal with stress. And the other way, I said it before, you find God. You have somebody solid to talk to all the time, every time, wherever you are. He's always going to listen. It's important. It's important that, we give thanks. It's important that we know we have someone we can look to and we can talk to. And it's just nice to, realize you have someone you can talk to. You can always talk to God. All right, here are a few more coping mechanisms. I just want to put my personal ones out there, the dog and God. Maintaining a routine. Again, that's one of those ones that's a lot easier to type than do in a crisis. It speaks for itself what you do. There's no trick to it. It's you maintain a routine if at all possible. Limiting exposure to stressors. Again, so much easier to type out or write out than it is to say, but this is the truth. This is what Psychology 101 will teach you, all this stuff I'm talking about. Probably my least favorite class ever. You have to know your team. You have to know what they're capable of handling. And if need be, you're going to rotate them with tasks away from the actual stressors. I started to write this one down, and then I called bullshit. There's no such thing as a relaxation technique. You get a big dog or you talk to God. They're talking about all this chi breathing exercises and downward goat or whatever. No, none of that shit. You get a big dog or you talk to God. Buddha never had to deal with vehicle accidents, so I don't know that that's the route to go. Another one I started to write down and then I stopped. So many people, their whole, what do you want to call it? Their own system around them. I don't know how I'm trying to say this. As far as knowing people, everyone they know and everyone they call their friend is online. They don't have any physical in front of them, shake their hand friends. Everyone they think is their friend is online. They're the only ones I would say maybe let them use social media for a de-stressor or a coping mechanism. It doesn't hold a candle to having real people there to de-stress. The role of communication. Clear, accurate, and consistent communication is essential during a crisis. Misinformation and rumors can increase fear and confusion. Providing timely updates and guidance helps individuals feel informed and empowered. Now, if you remember, what was it, 2 podcasts ago, I told you, even if the news is bad news, even if the only news you have is bad news, you're going to tell them, do not hide the truth. I'm not saying you got to walk in there and wake somebody up and tell them, but if someone asks you what's going on and the answer is bad news, you got to give it to them. You're going to come across as deceitful and a liar if you change the truth at all. They need to know they can depend on you, and even if your news is bad news, you are honest with them. This will come into play. I can almost guarantee you at some point in an extended crisis situation, it will come into play. This is, man, I'm half awake. I read this stuff and I start taking notes and I think back to our training, and I actually got out one of my old 3-ring binders from the police academy, and it's amazing how much crap they have on the psychological stuff now versus like when I went to the academy many moons ago. And, the first time I went through fire training, I got certified in everything. Now, keep in mind, to be certified for vehicle rescue, exterior structure fire, interior structure fire, I don't know, pick another one and throw it in there, something else, I don't know. Maybe utility cutoffs, training to cut off utilities. Those 4 things, to take those 4 classes would probably take you 6 months to a year. Just because you only meet so many nights a week, the state says you have to have so many hours, blah, blah, blah. You don't know when the courses are available. They'll post when the courses are available, and then they'll change it without telling you. So we're looking at 6 months to a year. I was certified, when I first went through, I was certified in everything you could possibly imagine in one day. We didn't do anything about the psychological stuff. We weren't trained. We didn't go over anything. First responders take a beating as far as psychological goes. Now it's a huge part of vehicle rescue training just because of what you're going to roll up on. What I'm getting at is this psychological first aid that it's one of these big American Society for something that has to do with psychology. They came up with this list, and I'm going to read it out to you. And I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to call bullshit on. It's an approach designed to reduce initial distress and promote adaptive functioning. I really wasted ink writing this shit down. It focuses on ensuring safety, providing comfort, stabilizing emotional response, connecting individuals with support systems, offering practical assistance. All right. So out of that list of 1, 2, 3, 4, my handwriting's bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 topics. Out of that list, say you look out the window and your city that you lived in is on fire, collapsed. There's just no city there anymore. There's no power. There's no running water. Out of that list, 1, 2, 3 things you wouldn't be able to do. So why even put a list like this out if it's supposed to be for crisis? I don't know. I really don't know. You need someone to talk to, or you need a big dog. That's that. I'm going to go to that all the time, and that person you're going to talk to is God. But I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. I swear to God, these people, they might have like their doctorate and everything else, but they just can't empathize and put themselves in the shoes of first responders for real, or put you in a crisis situation. Well, here's what you do. Well, they're talking about rallying the troops, singing Kumbaya by the campfire and handing out popsicles. And that's not what's going to happen. The only people that are going to help you deal with this shit is the people sitting right next to you. Choose your mag wisely. Boy, I was looking for a segue for that this whole time. There it is. Choose your mag wisely, and choose someone. Man, it's so hard to tell you what to put in your mag, what you need in your mag. You need a good listener. I'm not saying to get a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or I don't even know what the difference is. I'm not telling you to look for someone like that. You just need a good listener. They're the ones going to be able to help the most. All right? Long-term mental health considerations. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. There was a lot on this. It has nothing to do with the first 24 hours, the first 48 hours, the first 3 days, the first week, the first month. We're not going to worry about that. You're not going to be 2 years down the road from now living in your log house consisting of logs and mud and bird feathers, and you're sitting there eating a bowl of, soup that consists of bird feathers and hot water. You're not going to look across the room and say, so how are we doing today? Let me get out my pad and paper and let's take some notes. What makes you feel that way? Blah, blah. It doesn't work like that. It's let somebody talk, listen to them, give them that positive feedback, and then move on. If they're going to have problems with this, I'm sorry, but they're going to have problems with this. You're not going to be able to deal with this in a crisis. So don't even think, I see this all the time, even in a lot of books that I've picked up to buy and then I put back down, the whole long-term recovery from a crisis situation. That's great if it's an isolated incident and you have, it was something that just happened like an accident or something. That's one thing. But, societal collapse or something like that, or power outage across 2/3 of the country or something like that, you're not going to be doing no psychological. You're not going to be, let's say you're not going to be making appointments with a therapist, because the therapist isn't going to be taking appointments. He's going to be, out in the woods banging his head on a tree or something. Don't think there's an easy way out of this shit. That being said, I do believe if you talk it out with people and just get it off your chest, what's making you feel so bad, or you talk to God and tell God what's making you feel so bad, I believe, my personal opinion, I'm not a doctor, but I believe that that's going to help you more than pretty much anything else, getting it off your chest. All right, let's talk about community and collective recovery. Recovery from a crisis is not only an individual process, but also a collective one. Yes and no. What happens if you didn't realize how much of an asshole that one guy in your mag is, that just loves to torture people, that just loves to watch people, that's his way of validating his existence. He has no other reason to survive. Up until the crisis, he was living in his parents' basement, and he was like 50 years old. He was still living in his parents' basement. He has nothing to contribute to society, and the only way that he makes him feel better is by making other people feel worse. Keep your eyes out for this. I don't know that I would, say, hey, can you come, just the first person you see, hey, can you come over here and talk to Tommy? He's really having trouble coping through what happened last week. I wouldn't be doing that. They could make things a lot worse. So, and I know it's kind of being a naysayer, but it's a fact. Psychological considerations are critical components of crisis response and recovery. Mental and emotional impact crisis can be significant as physical harm affecting individuals' ability to cope and function. I don't even know what the hell that means. I wrote that down. I was thinking about it. Hang on. Oh, okay. I know what I was trying to get at. Let's just say it this way. People with psychological issues as a result of the crisis can be returned to, for lack of better terms, active duty, as long as they've been allowed to express what's bothering them. They have to display the fact that you might be able to put them on a forward listening post and they're not going to start cutting on their arms, because they're cutters now because of the stress. But before you put a weapon in their hands, and this is what this has all been culminating up to, this is what I'm trying to get to at the end of this here. I'm pushing it all together and spewing this out. They do not touch weapons of any kind. They're not allowed to have knives. They're not allowed to have anything until they're stable. This is more for your protection than theirs. But keep this in mind. If you have an unstable person in your group due to a crisis situation, get their guns, get their knives, whatever you got to do. I can't give you any better advice than that. After you get their guns or knives or grenades or flamethrower, whatever they got, you can then start to triage and figure out what you're going to do with them. maybe they were screwed up before the crisis. You don't know sometimes. So what I'm getting at is, do not teach psychological damage, or do not treat psychological damage like it's just something that's going to pass over. It's going to go away. It doesn't work that way. You have a responsibility if they're in your mag to take care of them. I wouldn't waste food and water on that situation as far as, eat something else. Well, here, eat something else, you'll feel better. Drink copious amounts of water, blah, blah. No, I wouldn't do something like that, but I would try. I would give it a shot. Now, if you get the bad guys running down the hill with their pew-pews out, coming right at you, we're not going to sit there and try to delve into little Tommy Boy's psyche and figure out what's wrong with him. But if you're in a place where you can rest and relax and you're under no threat, you can maybe try to talk to them about it and get them to talk about it. They might feel a lot better. Like I said, I'm no expert. I just know what we were taught, what I've been taught, what I've read. I just know from running ambulance calls how to deal with people, because we, running vehicle accident situations and stuff like that, we had some shit that people had to deal with. I had talked on I think the last podcast, if not the one before, about holding that little kid's head together in the back of an ambulance for a 15-minute ambulance ride. That's never going to leave me. I'm stuck with that. The rest of my life, I'm stuck with that. I've learned to deal with it. I didn't go to a doctor for it. I didn't, read a book about it. I didn't, hug everybody at the fire department until it went away. I just finally dealt with it. Some people are geared that way. Some aren't. The ones that aren't, I take nothing away from them for that fact. It's just some people are and some people aren't. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to cut out the other podcast tonight. I don't know if it's going to happen. The other one's a little more fun. But I'm sorry I couldn't make this funnier or more fun. It's just I take this seriously, and I'm not going to downplay the seriousness of the situation. You don't know trouble until you have somebody put in your care that's carving on their arm out of stress, or something like that. Like, you don't have enough of problems going on, and then you got a cutter on top of it. You're going to have to deal with it. So watch your six, and peace out.